Um, so I like to start with Zofran because it's simple. We know that it's 4 milligrams for an adult. We know that that means it's the whole thing, right? Which is usually 2 milliliters. So I am just going to plop that up there real quick. Blammo. Right. So, okay. So if I'm looking at this now, obviously we don't have to do the math on 4 milligrams and 2 milliliters. We know that we give 2 milliliters, but if we walk slowly through the math, then that'll probably get us there. And so what we're looking at and trying to figure out how much of a vial to give is going to be what the concentration is. And so let me even vial of Zofran. So if I pull up something like this, right, then we're looking at the concentration, which is right here, 2 milligrams and, or sorry, 4 milligrams and 2 milliliters. So this over here, our solute in volume, is our concentration. That's our 4 milligrams in 2 milliliters, right? And so I know then how to input everything because my desired dose is 4, because that's the dose I want to give them, 4.0 milligrams. And I put that over my solute concentration, which is 4 milligrams in 2 milliliters, right? So even though we could do the math on that, 4 divided by 4 times 2, ultimately it just tells us what we already know, which is 2 milliliters. And that's how we work through a concentration. Now, if we could just, if we had Zofran in a powder, you know, we wouldn't need our solute or our volume. It would just be 4 milligrams of powder. But because we're not giving them an oral powder, we're giving them an intravenous medication, then we do need to figure out how much of that powder is in the liquid, and that's 2 milliliters. And so now if we do something that's, well, we can just do a pediatric Zofran, which is going to be a little bit more complicated. So if we pick an age, like let's say we use our hand heavy and we just pick a 5-year-old, 2 milligram, or sorry, 5-year-old is 20 kilograms, because of course we're doing 0.15 per kilogram, always maxing at adult doses for these things. So put pretty simply, we need to figure out what 20 kilograms times 0.15 milligrams is, or to make it maybe not as confusing or reversed, 20 kilograms. Right, so we throw that into the old calculatrice. 20 times 0.15, and I come up with 3. So our desired dose is 3 milligrams. And if it were something like, I don't know, a 9-year-old or a slightly older and it capped out at like 4.5, obviously we're not going to want to go above the adult dose. So anyways, so our desired dose is 3 milligrams, and because it's weight-based, we had to do an extra step calculation in there. But our concentration hasn't changed at all. It's still 4 milligrams in 2 milliliters, right? And so now we're just dividing 3 by 4 and multiplying it by 2. So 3 divided by 4 is 0.75 times 2 is 1.5. And so as far as how much medication I'm drawing up, well, I want to draw up 3 milligrams, but I have no idea how much that is until, and as far as a volume, until I do the formula. And the formula works out to 1.5 milliliters. This can be learned by hearing it. You just have to do this over and over, right? You have to say, okay, well, I am going to take a blank piece of paper and I'm going to look at Zofran for kids, and I'm just going to go through each age. I'm going to go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and I'm just going to do that over and over and over. So I've got a 1-year-old, that's 10 kilograms, so that's 10 kilograms times, wow, that is hieroglyphics. 10 kilograms times, that's a plus, oh boy, times 15 milligrams per kilogram, right? Well, that's easy. We just move that over. So that's 1.5 milligrams is my desired dose. My solute is the same, right? That's the, well, I deleted it, but that's the 4 milligrams. And my volume is the same. That's 2 milliliters. So I divide 1.5 by 4, multiply it by 2, and it comes out to 0.75 milliliters. Fantastic. Then I go back through, and I'm like, all right, let's do a 3-year-old. That's 15 kilograms. So 0.15 milligrams times 15 kilograms turns out to 2.25 divided by the 4 solute and the 2 milliliter volume. So 2.25 divided by 4 times 2 turns out to 1.125. You know, and you just keep doing that over and over, and then you're like, all right, well, let's grab a different drug. We'll do fentanyl is probably a simpler one. Put this over here. And so now we got a med like fentanyl. Fentanyl is weight-based even for adults. And so if I said, okay, well, my guy weighs 176 pounds. Well, fentanyl is measured in micrograms per kilogram, so I got to divide that by 2.2. 176 divided by 2.2 is 80. 80 kilograms is what this guy weighs. Well, it's 1 microgram per kilogram, so that means it's 1 microgram times 80 kilograms. 1 times 80 is 80. So that means my desired dose is 80 micrograms. And that would be fine if I just had a handful of fentanyl dust I could blow in his face, 80 micrograms of it. But I don't, or at least I shouldn't. And so now we have to essentially look at a bottle of fentanyl. So if I just Google fentanyl vial, let's take this guy right here. I've got a fentanyl vial, 100 micrograms in 2 milliliters. So I take 1.6. So we're giving 1.6 milliliters. So if I said, you know, the thing is, you go into into the hospital and say, hey, how much fentanyl did you give? And they say, well, I gave 1.6 milliliters. And they're like, of fentanyl? How much is that? And you'd have to be able to say, well, okay, well, I gave 80 micrograms of fentanyl. They don't care how many milliliters you gave, but we care because that's how you administer it. So this is our desired over have situation. But if we were going to look at dextrose, in my opinion, dextrose is so much simpler because you are basically just, if you can remember that you need to give 5 milliliters per kilogram to all humans, all you need to do is figure out how to make D10 from D50. All humans minus newborns, I suppose. All you need to figure out is how to make D10, and that's easy as long as you can divide by 5. And so if I, for example, just write a bunch of normal saline presentations, like let's say I have a 100 bag, let's say I have a 250 bag, let's say I have a 500 bag, let's say I have a 1,000 bag, right? And so these are the various saline bags that I have. Well, I would just come in and divide each one of these by 5, right? Just like on the homework assignment. And so this would be what? 20, this would be 50, this would be 100, this would be 200, right? So whatever bag of saline I have, I'm just dividing that by 5 to figure out how much I need to take out of saline. Need to drain this much out of each one of these bags. And then this is the same number to add for dextrose. So to recap, if I have a 100 bag of saline and I want to make it D10, well, 20 saline out, 20 D10, 20 D5, 20 D50 in. If I want to take a bag of 250, how do I make a bag of 250 normal saline D10? Well, 50 saline out, 50 D50 in, and then 100, and then 200. And so this is how, as long as I can remember to divide normal saline bag by 5, that's how much D50 needs to go in and how much normal saline needs to come out. Of course, you do the normal saline out first, but does that make sense? So if for example, now basically most people are only doing 250, and most people don't know how to do the math. They just remember that 50 out, 50 in from a 250 bag, and that's what they do for their entire career. Most medics don't know how to do the math on it. I don't know how to do most of the math on it just because I don't need to. Who cares? But if you can remember 50 out, 50 in on a 250 bag, you're going to be solid. But I think more importantly, if you can just remember that whatever amount of saline you have, you divide that by 5, that'll tell you how much to take in and out. And part of the reason why no one really cares about 500 and 1,000 bags of D10 is because nobody needs that much often. But also, if you notice, we're talking 100 out and 200 out, which also means 100 D50 in and a 200 D50 in, which now we're starting to talk about putting in 2 entire amps of D50 into a 500 bag or 4 into a 1,000 bag. That's absurd. So most people aren't doing that. They're just throwing a D50 bag into 250. And even though it'll never be the right answer on a test, it's not even crazy to not even drain out 50 from the 250 bag and just slam it in there. You're not making D10 anymore. It's D 9.2 or whatever the heck it is, but it doesn't super matter. The reason why I think this is particularly cool is that it doesn't matter if you know that all you got to do is divide your saline by 5, then it doesn't matter how much saline you have. You could look up there and see that you had a bag that was 126 milliliters of saline, even though you wouldn't have that and you couldn't see that because they don't get that specific. But if you divide 126 by 5, that would give you 25.2, which then tells you I need to take out 25 milliliters of saline and add in 25 milliliters of D50. And so again, as long as you can remember to divide by 5, whatever your saline is, you can make D10 that way. And so that's kind of part why I say it's like this rule of 5s, because that's step 1 really, is normal saline divided by 5. That's our first 5. That's how much normal saline is coming out. Our second 5 is how much D50 is going in, and they're the same. Whatever you took out is what's going in. The last 5 is that unless you're freshly born, I'm just multiplying whatever your weight is, your kilograms, times 5 to equal how much to give you. So I divide the saline by 5, I add that much back in of D50, now I've got D10, I multiply your weight by 5, and that's how many milliliters. I weigh 165 divided by 2.2, so I weigh 75 kilograms. I multiply that by 5. That means I need to give 375 milliliters. Now, admittedly, you would say, well, wait a second. That's more than the 250 bag, and if I used a 250 bag, that wouldn't cut it. And that's true, but also the truth of all of this stuff is even if the exact dose is the times 5 and the like, most people get better really fast off the sugar, and you don't end up even giving all of the 250 bag, let alone the 375 that was indicated. But if you needed that much and the guy wasn't getting any better, well, then you just spike up another bag and run it.